Have you ever went fishing using dynamite? Because this is really what it feels like playing the Jobava London, at least below 1700. So whether you're just starting out, let's say your rating is 800, whether it's 1200, 1500, you name it, this is one of the most effective openings that you can be using with the white pieces. Literally giving you wins in 4 moves against players that are very decent on a regular basis just because of the surprise value that we get. So let me explain. First of all, I know a lot of you may be quite familiar already with the normal London, which obviously starts after the moves bishop to f4, knight f6, e3, let's say black does whatever, and white goes for this very famous pawn pyramid. Now, this is more of like a slower setup. White is pretty much playing more of like a waiting game. And when you're going for the Jobava London, we typically start with a knight. And then, point is, after black goes knight f6, we go bishop to f4. This is everything but a waiting opening, because white is already having a massive threat of going knight b5, typically going right after Achilles' heel. That is what I like to refer to black's weakest point, the c7 square highlighted with the red color. So in today's video, I'm gonna be walking you through my thinking process as an international master against players that are roughly 1700, highlighting some of their very common mistakes, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two. So without further introduction, let's just dive right into the action. All right, everybody, getting another white game. I'm gonna be going d4, and I'm gonna start with knight c3. See, a very common position already on the board. Opponent develops king's knight. I'm gonna go bishop to f4. And here they have a choice. It's gonna be bishop f5, pawn to e6, or perhaps even knight e6. Man, 1500. This is like better than 90% of the players around chess.com. They still make this pretty absurd mistake, just allowing knight to b5, which is really the main trap of the whole Jobava London. So knight b5, a lot of people see this as sort of the reversed fried liver. I don't care how you think about it, what do you compare it with, this just wins. Opponent goes e5 because this is like the only sort of reasonable way of defending against it. I've seen like so many reactions from black in this position, you have no idea. Like the funniest are those around like 800 blitz. You get people doing all kinds of things like king d7. Imagine I had students facing rook b8 more than once. And somehow they didn't even go bishop takes on c7 in the first place, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, this is leading to like pretty funny games. On e5, just gonna take with a pawn, hoping he's gonna go knight e4, because on knight e4 there's a pretty funny trick. There is queen takes on d5, temporarily giving up the queen because there is knight c7 winning it back. On knight h5, hitting the bishop, really important move. Okay, I cannot stress this enough because you're gonna be getting this sort of winning positions on a regular basis, and you don't want to miss them. I saw people for some reason just going back, or you know, doing any kind of like crazy things. Just go e3 defend, and also attacking the enemy knight. They're gonna be taking, and a6 is important here for black. Important that you go to d4. That's like the best square. Going to c3 can get you in trouble easily after bishop b4, and d4 becomes annoying. So a6, knight e4, I would say from this point you should have a relatively easy time converting. And yeah, can pretty much figure out things on your own. So yeah, I'm gonna go knight f3, just preparing to retake with the knight, or in other words, just continuing to develop. Plays bishop to g4. I mean, I really want to double up those pawns. Potentially try to target that. We go bishop e2, finish development, knight d4 ideas. Rook b8, we simply have b3. Do we? Then check could be tiny bit annoying. Oh, he plays queen b8. That's even more elegant. I think at this point, just Fine, give up on that pawn. If he takes it with a queen, I feel like he might be making a little bit too many moves with that queen. This guy clearly has just seen some sort of Alpha Zero recent video now that he starts playing h5. Problem is, king is in the middle. So I don't think any of this should work. And typically the way to refute king in the middle is just a move like c4. Just wide opening the center. Threatening cd5 and potentially we already have bunch of interesting ideas like sacrifice the bishop on f7, you know, like things like this will be in the air. So yeah, playing c4. I really like that castle move, by the way. I think it's really instructive. It's like the position may become pretty complicated once queen b8 gets played. You think, oh, maybe we do b3, then bishop b4 gets played. It's like whenever you're like at a party and there's like a very crowded room and you just, you know, go outside for a minute, take a, breath of fresh air. We make this calm move, castling, and the position really stabilizes and everything is under control. Okay, pawn going back. What do we do? There's a weak pawn. Could potentially target that. There is cd5 as a very reasonable move as well. Yeah, I think we just start knight e4, just like literally unpinning and threatening to take on c6. I don't really see a good way for my opponent to defend against that, and on bishop e2 just take it back with a queen. Idea to take. Idea to also infiltrate and then take. So I'm gonna place queen to d7. That feels like a fishy move for me. I mean, even taking is not bad. I mean, it's not like we're gonna get mated by a single rook. I mean, that's definitely a thing. There is h3, kind of forcing things off. I really want to go with easy, straightforward play. Okay, we'll give him the open rook. Yeah, can have that. Fine by me. Was feeling pretty generous today. So, yeah, now queen a4 comes to mind, targeting the pawn. Even the direct e6 may be pretty tricky to deal with for my opponent. I think I'm just gonna play just because it's really in the theme of the way we have played this game so far. So king in the middle, rule number 1, try to open up the position. Why? Well, you just see it in this game. We have knight e6, he cannot take it because there will be rook e1. Big problems with the king, and now the knight is just saying, okay, Mr. King, you're gonna be trapped in the middle of the board for a while. So he literally cannot castle anywhere because that would simply not be a legal move. King cannot go through check, and he has to deal with a bunch of nasty discoveries. So he decides it's better to just start walking with king f7. Okay, fine. Gonna cash in my free pawn. Could have cashed in g4 as well. There's literally 100 winning moves in this position. Everything wins. The position just wins itself. So yeah, gonna take it now. Big threat. Also additional threat. Knight g5. Pick up the queen. So I think at this point position is resignable and the opponent does take on d5, which definitely allows mate in 1. So we managed to get the win. Remember, developing both knights against the Jobava London simply loses on the spot. After knight b5, white is already completely winning, and on e5, nice trap that you want to keep in mind. In the game, we saw the move knight h5, another typical alternative, knight e4. Here you want to remember this very beautiful move, queen takes on d5. In case they take, there is simply knight takes on c7, king has to move, retake that, bishop c5, defend against the checkmate, and white is completely winning. So, yeah, besides that, I don't think there's anything interesting from this game. Just curious on queen b8, what does the engine think? Okay, queen b8, top line castle, you see? Just, there was no convenient way of defending, like b3, he could maybe take, throw in bishop b4, we have to move the king. It's, okay, not a disaster, but somewhat inconvenient, so for that reason, it's way better not to be materialistic, just let him take if he wants it, and then try to open up the position. Yeah, just exploiting the king that's in the middle. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Alright, everybody, getting another white game. Gonna hop into another Jobava London, of course, and opponent goes for the early bishop to f5, which you can definitely make a case, like a separate case for how to refute it, how to play specifically against it with like f3 or things like that. However, you know me, I'm a simple guy. I like to, just keep things very casual. Get the Jobava London first, and then we see what we're after. So typically, whenever you have this situation with like the bishop onto f5, I like to think of it as sort of an actor that did underperform onto a show. Like, you know, how it used to happen like back in the days where perhaps the public didn't really enjoy your act that much, and then all of a sudden people just start throwing tomatoes at you while you're onto the scene. Now, thinking back at it, as crazy as it may sound, tomatoes are pretty goddamn expensive with this inflation, so are you next Bill Gates, like throwing tomatoes? I don't know. So I like to really think of it as this bishop onto f5 being a bad actor, and now we just throw tomatoes at it with the pawns. We're gonna go f3 and just really start, basically attacking this bishop back and forth. Typically, they just slide it back. Going all the way to c8 would be really unusual. Okay, this was unexpected. I've been playing these positions for a while, and I have to tell you, this one I don't get to face very often. So I'm just gonna be playing e3, just acting like, all right, play it cool. And typically, in these positions, we develop bishop d3, knight e2. Usually bishops get traded and we castle long. So I'll just try to do something very similar. g5, hitting my bishop, just sidestep. No need to go to e5 because the bishop can easily become a target. So I'm glad that he played g5. Now we just have a hook for h4 ideas. Gonna go knight e2, queen d2, long castle h4. That is pretty much the plan. And white has no difficult moves whatsoever. All of these is what we would generally play on a regular basis. And oh my god, he's going queen to b6. Now, do you guys think we're actually gonna be trapping his queen in case he takes that pawn? Well, not immediately. Like, if you go queen d2, queen b2, he's gonna walk away with it. But, just a but, what if we play the move a3? I think he's instantly taking that pawn. Like, I'm even tanking it. Like, I'm trying to set up a trap, trying to come up with something. All my money on the move that he's gonna be taking on b2, like, instantly. That is, he's not even gonna think about it. Just watch. This is just absolutely insane. The queen has no moves. Look at these people. He just dropped his brain on the floor and now takes with the queen on a3. What is this guy even up to? Oh my, what are we witnessing? Just a free queen. Massive, total collapse. This is unreal. This is worse than the Nepo collapse after losing against Ding in the tiebreak. This is unreal. Just a free queen like that. Oh my. Alright, so jokes aside, let's try to focus on the educational part. So, we've seen that whenever we see a bishop onto f5, what is up with this guy there? Like, just pretty, you know, pretty bad actor. Just go f3, g4. Attacking the bishop. Now, opponent did something pretty funny. The actor was tired of this nonsense. He had, you know, a little bit of a longer day at the office or at the theater. So he went back onto c8. It was like, I had enough. But then we just continue with the normal play. Make sure to keep in mind this idea. Whenever black goes queen b6, and you're playing the London, and they're trying to sort of take away that pawn on b2 from you, you know, if you just ignore That's not gonna work out the same because he has square on a3. But make sure you do a3, queen takes on b2, knight e4, queen is literally trapped, no squares. Just look at it, it's beautiful. Taking b6, b5 is covered, all of these are covered. Queen has no move, so with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Alright everybody, getting another game with the white pieces. Gonna open up with a queen's pawn, and we are ready to get another Jobava London, or perhaps a King's Indian, because the opponent goes for fianchetto. You can start with both bishop f4 or e4. I like e4 just because it's a little more forcing, creating a direct threat in case of bishop g7, e5 is very annoying. And on d6, we're gonna stick with Jobava play, just getting these pieces in, and normally we get to see the move bishop to g7. And at this point, you basically have two ways of playing it. Like, if you consider yourself a semi-decent player, the proper way of doing this is to go queen d2. You're gonna castle, and then you basically wanna castle long, do bishop h6, f3, defend d4, go h4, h5, trade the fianchetto bishop, take on g6, bring your queen to h6, get rid of the f6 knight, and then checkmate on h7. So, if you're considering yourself somewhat of an ambitious player, I recommend that. All of this, of course, while wearing an imaginary suit. But if, you know, you're a moron like all of we are, I recommend the move e5. Because that is simply going to be giving us so many free wins after d5, d5. And then if he trades queens, white is almost completely winning already. It's just a matter of whether they're going to take or not. But typically they do, like 8 games out of 10. And I know this is somewhat counterintuitive, like how this variation can be so good and why are they entering it all the time. It's basically like this, yeah, like the peer players, they know white is up to do this sort of things and checkmate them. So it's very natural for the peer player to try to get rid of the queens, which is usually the main issue of why they lose most of the times. So it's very natural for them to enter the endgame, thinking that they're safe, maybe pawn on e5 is weak. But they're actually just busted already. You can catch so many strong players in this, you have no idea. Even players that are easily 2000, you can just destroy them by playing this setup. And normally I expect knight h5 or knight d7. And against both, we're gonna have the same key idea. Now, knight h5 is attacking our bishop. I know the main reflex for most of the players would be to just, you know, he's attacking my piece, I need to move the piece. No, that's how weak-minded people think. He's attacking our piece, we should look for a stronger threat, or at least a similar threat. So only like last, if there is nothing more interesting, you want to retreat. So in this position, I recommend you go for a counterattack, which is targeting Achilles' heel here, the c7 pawn. And you could do that in two ways. You could go knight b5 or knight d5. Now question, which one do you think is better? And in case you decided to go for knight d5, you're somewhat lucky because you mainly wanted to protect the bishop. But the key concept is that if you were to play knight to b5, in the other position, black has saving move, knight a6. So notice that the bishop cannot move through knight. And that is not a thing. And opponent, after we play knight d5, he took my bishop, thinking that we're gonna be, okay, taking the rook, but maybe the knight gets trapped. But we're not gonna be taking the rook. We actually just have checkmate in 10 moves. So look at this. How easy of a checkmate you can get against people that are 1600. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Look at this. You go into this player's profile, you click onto their rating, and you're gonna notice this player is within the 97th percentile. Like, imagine this person is better than literally all the players that you're gonna be facing on like a regular basis. And you can just do this small opening exploit, going e5, which is like just slightly dubious. If they know like the best move, knight h5, bishop d2, and then the e5, you're gonna be down upon, but position objectively is equal. You take, they take with the bishop, go queen e2, castle long, push the pawns. It's leading to fun games. I play this. So If they don't, and they go e5, just important to not confuse yourself here playing the move knight b5 because they have knight a6. So you cannot take their knight. That's the problem. When you go knight d5 on knight a6, you have bishop takes on a6 and white is completely winning. And believe it or not, they literally have no way to defend the c7 square. So white is much better. They are supposed, I believe, to just castle at this point. I forgot how the variation goes. I think it's just something like knight e7, king h8. And I remember checking something like perhaps bishop to c1. I'm trying to understand what my prep was. Yeah, I think bishop c1 is a fine move. Bishop e5, you take that, and then something like bishop c4. And white is still like better in an open position with the bishop pair, but they rarely find this kind of things. So yeah, going knight c7 against castle would be less good, because after knight a8, bishop e5, your knight is getting trapped. So opponent will end up with extra material after something like this. So yeah, King's Indian, remember, go e4, and sure, if you wanna do the proper way, queen e2 bishop h6 works, but if you're looking for a life hack to literally win most of your games, e5 is a pretty evil variation. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. All right, everybody, getting the white pieces, and we're gonna try to spice things up, and we're gonna be going for the Jobava London. And I am actually super glad that we get to face this kind of opening, because it would really throw off, like, especially a lot of the lower rated players that are watching this thinking, okay, we play d4, they go e6, and now what? This is like not theory, what are we even supposed to do? So, for starters, we're basically like a chameleon. We're playing knight c3, and then point is to play bishop f4, still trying to get the Jobava London setup. Now, if opponent would have done probably something weird like a6, h6, whatever, I typically just recommend to go and take very aggressive measures just by transposing into the so-called Austrian attack. But he did realize, okay, time to play more standard and step in the center. So therefore he played the move d5, which is pretty much just a fancy way of entering one of the starting positions for the Jobava London. Now, knight f6 is leading to all the kind of standard and well-studied main lines, while black could also deviate with moves such as either bishop d6 or perhaps even bishop b4. Could be an interesting alternative to my opponent. So let's see what he decides to go for here. Typically, for people that do play this move further, I would really expect them to play bishop to d6. And here we get to talk a little bit about the first rule, or maybe one of the rules that you really need to know best, because you get this tension with the bishops really often in the Jobava London. And the tricky part about this is, perhaps if you are like following the channel for the normal London system type of content, in the normal London, you actually know that on a number of occasions we would just be playing the move bishop to g3. However, as you play the Jobava version, which is more aggressive, I would recommend you never do that move. I mean, it's the Jobava London. You know what Jobava looks like. If you don't know, Google it. He is not the kind of guy to retreat, so therefore we just play the move e3. Ready to take back on f4 with a pawn and entering a pretty interesting pawn structure. And in case they don't take, we're just ready to play knight f3, bishop d3, typically meeting c5 with d takes on c5. So yeah, opponents, they will usually take and perhaps go knight f6 or go for c5. Now the move c6. This is something that, well, it looks kind of nice, like setting up the pyramid, but the bishop is trapped on the wrong side. So imagine like your house is on fire and you simply don't have the keys. You're like completely trapped, and that is literally how the bishop feels on c8. It should be out on f5, you know, like on this square outside the pawn chain. So for this reason, white is just better. We have a more active bishop. So just gonna go knight f3, bishop d3, castle. Funny thing, if you look at this type of positions with modern computers, I know for a fact they will recommend the move h4 in this structure. It's just very interesting to give white some sort of attacking possibilities. I'm just gonna keep it simple here, bishop d3. And in case he castles, which he does immediately, I'm afraid that might be a losing mistake already. So feel free to please pause the video, go ahead, take your calculation glasses on, and try to find the winning continuation for white. Because I really do believe that going for the Greek gift, if not completely winning, should definitely be very dangerous. So we're gonna go for it. I don't think at this point you're risking much. I just know for a fact if knight g5, king g8, I think he is probably like 100% lost. So he needs to try one of these two moves. But like none of them seem really particularly appealing. So he plays the move king g6. Now, normally queen to g4 would be the, let's say, usual way of continuing with ideas like knight e6, discovery. But problem is, even if you do that, take the queen, then your queen is gonna be under attack. So queen e3, I think, is quite an instructive motive, yeah, provoking this f5 idea. And now the idea was to swing the queen all the way to g3, still playing for discovery. So I believe only move for opponent king f6. We already have the choice of playing knight h7, winning a little bit of the sacrifice material back. But I think it's just better to keep going with force play. But he simply blunders, playing the move queen d6, which is again a good moment for you to pause the video and try to find the main reason why queen d6 is a huge blunder and just loses the game on the spot. Problem is that he had to deal with this discovery, because now we just have check, pick up the queen, and in the meantime, poor bishop on c8 is still trapped inside the house. Now, this was not the cleanest Greek gift of all time, but it's definitely something that you should really have in your toolkit if you want to become like a really successful chess player in general. This is one of the most fundamental attacking patterns that exist in this game, this so-called Greek gift. So, yeah, when I took on h7, just to sort of walk you a little bit more through my calculation for a little bit of context, when I make this move, it's not like I see force mate. I just seen situations like this enough times that it gives me a feeling that this is gonna be a pretty advantageous situation. The main thing being that he placed the knight on e7 for absolutely no reason. If you just go back, he could have definitely gone for a move like knight f6, and the knight would have been way better in defending against that potential motive. So knight f6 would have just played bishop d3, castle, and play for like a small advantage. But on knight e7, even though you could still go for short castle and still have a better game, bishop takes on h7 becomes a very interesting move. And at this point, it's very easy to guess that king g8, queen h5, threatening mate on h7. His only move to avoid would be rook e8. White at least has a perpetual with queen f7, queen h5, and you could do that forever. In this position, obviously, it feels like there should be more. You could look at it with a computer. The computer recommends even a move like long castle. I think the main point is that you're just sort of introducing the rook for potential attacking ideas, and black is simply unable to bring pieces into the game. So now the whole thing will transpose more into sort of like a positional attack. Even though we are down a piece, we just need to bring more pieces over, and black is like pretty much paralyzed. So he did the better try. He felt like king g8 is just not gonna give him any chances, and he chose the move king g6. Now, if you look with a computer, even though we are down a piece, it does show a positive evaluation. True, it's not showing a winning evaluation, but it still claims that white is slightly better with a plus 0.5, which translates into the fact that white has an extra half of a pawn, if that makes any sense. So he decided to go king g6, and I think the key idea to remember from this motif is that I think queen g4, even though it seems okay, would have been pretty unclear to me. It felt like it could potentially ruin this whole thing. Like, imagine black would have found a move like knight g8, which is for some reason the best. And now you go for the tempting knight e6. Yeah? I was thinking, okay, maybe they could do something like king f6. And if you go ahead taking the queen, being very happy about the fact that you just managed to touch a woman for the first time in your life, then black is going to be taking your queen as well. So there is no profit in this trade. And for this reason, I was super skeptical about queen g4. But there is the other concept. You could do queen e3 and then queen g3, and you're going to reach the same effect without having the queen on g4, which could potentially be on a more vulnerable square. So on queen e3, he doesn't have any like knight f5 because of g4. We win back the piece and then the attack keeps going. And I was obviously very lucky that he made a huge blunder at the end. He was supposed to play the move king f6, and I would have continued with long castle, which, yeah, according to the computer, also seems to be the best. And I was just thinking, all right, we don't have a clear way to checkmate the enemy king. But you cannot really tell me like that is a comfortable king on f6. It basically has nowhere to go. Maybe we can just go for slow ideas like rook e1, keep an eye on e6, go h4, h5, and black needs to make only one wrong step and they're completely busted like it happened in the game. So yeah, I hope you find this idea instructive. So make sure to always watch out for this type of motives when you have these pieces and there is no knight on f6 and also no bishop that could come at the end on f5. Because what happens when you go for ideas like this? Let's say the only thing that could backfire, if this pawn was not on e6, black could play the move bishop f5, defending h7. So that would be really painful news for us, but there is none of that, and the sacrifice works perfectly here. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. All right, everybody, getting another white game. Gonna open up with d4, and opponent plays the standard d5. I like to start with a knight while playing the Jubava because starting with the bishop is really inviting c5 type of ideas. So knight c3, still it's not very clear what you want to play. Maybe you want to go like Veresov attack, or maybe you have other ideas. So Veresov attack and basically Jubava London. There's not really many other ways to continue after playing this move, and just c5 looks more scary because dc5 could potentially lead this pawn on fire. Now if opponent was playing c5, e4 is my recommendation, however, and yeah, on knight f6, just getting very standard position so far for the Jubava London starting position. And now they have a choice. Bishop f5 is common, e6 is common there, a6 very common move as well. All of these like c6 stuff that I would expect you to face. And I'm super glad that we get to face the move bishop to f5, because I really like to think of it the following way. Like, remember back in the days where you used to, or maybe even now, I mean, who knows, used to travel using the public transport during winter. And whenever, let's say, your bus had to take a stop and it was snowing, there were these like super annoying kids outside that were just literally snowballing the bus while it was stopping. Or maybe it's just Romania, maybe it's just the hooligans around here. So this is literally how you want to see it. This is like the bus on f5, and we just start snowballing the bishop. Look at this, g4, boom, hitting the bishop once, hitting the bishop twice, threatening to trap it. And now they basically have two main reactions, h6 or h5. Or, yeah, happy if they don't do anything and we get to trap it. So opponent plays the move h6, where you typically have a choice already between either advancing or going for e3. Personally, I like to go for the move e3, just keeping ideas to go g5 later in the game and still keeping the option of taking with the pawn and attacking the knight. You want to be super careful with that though. You shouldn't forget about the fact that the rook remains undefended. Then, first instructive moment of the game, opponent plays the move bishop to d6. Okay, he's creating a positional threat of taking, and taking with a pawn would not be ideal. Now, remember this rule. Whenever they play bishop to d6 in this structure with f3, g4, okay, you really want to think about it, the structure with f3, g4. It does not apply in all the cases when they go bishop d6. So, whenever they do this, you're going to be able to take back on f4 with a knight, meaning our moves are either knight h3 or knight e2. Now, knight h3 looks a little bit trickier because it's on the edge on the board, and knight e2 would be a little bit more logical just because it's closer to the center. However, one of the main ways to develop for white is bishop d3 and then exchanging these bishops. So for that reason here, we are going to be sticking with knight h3, just keeping the bishop's path open so we can finish development. Now, for low-rated games, I mean, these are already not low-rated games anymore. These are like 1600 players that are like better than 95% of the players on chess.com. But still, even among this level, they make mistakes like prematurely taking on f4, giving us a tempo, while they're supposed to just go knight c6, queen e7, and somewhat wing it, I guess. Nevertheless, we just have a very simple plan, which is really what makes me love this opening. See, bishop h7, he just like has no idea what to do, just makes a move. Fine. We're going to win a tempo anyways. We're going to be trading that bishop, so we're playing bishop d3. Happy to take back with a queen. Okay, we always take back with a queen in this structure with f3, g4 because we want to castle long. We want to connect our rooks, and once the rooks are connected, we want to push g5. So I'm going to play c5, which I think is typically an interesting move, but in the current position may be a little bit of an inaccuracy because it really rings a bell whether queen b5 should actually be winning or not. Because only move to defend both pawns, I mean, pawn on b7 would be this, and also block the check. But that leaves the bishop vulnerable, so it's not working. And on queen b5, knight c6 looks like the only semi-reasonable move. There is queen b7, double attack. Hitting c6 knight and hitting the rook as well. Like his only move would be rook c8, and that is really kind of problematic for my opponent. So yeah, I think we're going to go for punishment here. Typically, yeah, they need to be super careful with this advance. And now bishop takes on f4 just blunders because queen c6 intermediate move wins a piece, and he has to find rook c8, only move, otherwise he resigns. And he resigns, I think, anyways, though, because there is bishop d6. I actually forgot about that. So yeah, I think he's completely sauced at this point. There's no way to deal with this. I mean, he can move the knight. I'm lying. Okay, guys, I'm spreading misinformation right now. I'm lying. He can actually move the knight. And that's not so bad if he plays knight. No, what am I saying? He's completely busted. Just take. I'm just hallucinating. I don't know. It's just these positions get so crazy winning so fast. It's just like even I have a hard time believing that this is actually something legal that you can just go ahead and play. Just look at this. It's literally... Okay, he took what? Just keep our calm. Okay, maybe even take on e7, even better. Yeah, stronger move. Hit the queen. Just look what I'm able to do this 1600 player. It's simply unbelievable to me. You can just literally collect every single one of their pieces without having to do any fancy moves. Just play like 9 moves of theory roughly, and you win all of their pieces, and you're better than like 95% of the players. I mean, still, okay, I'm a little bit exaggerating. I'm making it sound a little bit easier than it is. I know, but if you follow these rules, you should definitely have an easier time than most of the people. So we're having 2 extra knights, okay? So generally, when you have 2 extra knights in an endgame, you're in a pretty good position. It's like hard to miss it. It's like the girl texted you first. You really need to be dumb to mess things up. So just gonna take on d5 and gonna go for the fork. And yeah, I mean, imagine how much easier things are gonna be below this rating range. So say you play this as a 1000. Whereas at 1200, it becomes dramatically easier than this, if that's even possible. So just gonna try to open up the position now. Go d5, try to give my rook some open files, and then gonna exchange his last piece, which is the rook, and after that, we're just gonna be, yeah, I guess promoting. Rook to c6, go check, use the discovery, hope he plays king e8, there's rook e6, king f7, rook d7, king g6, rook g7, checkmate. King e8, okay, there's a simple move, rook e7 and pick up e6. Make sure not to stalemate. He has 2 pawns that can still move, so briefly checked whether rook c2 can be a problem. But yeah, there's clearly not that, and this is coming. Okay, you can already start giving up rook for the pawn at this point, but I'm not gonna do it because you may get checkmate. Only move a3 or king in the middle, and at this point we can literally get promotion with the, checkmate with the promotion. So finds the resign button, and yeah, just a very easy game, very easy from the opening. I wish we would have played in more of like a simpler way, like in case he plays better, like this. First, it's important to take and improve your knight, and then you go g5. So yeah, whenever they go like, let's say, long castle, these positions are considered to be somewhat even, but yeah, I think white has a bit of a practical edge, especially for fast time controls in this sort of symmetrical positions. Just imagine they take, maybe really promoting soon. So yeah, when they play c5, of course, there's not a disaster if you castle, allow c4, queen d2. Those positions are still very interesting to play, like queen d2, then take on d6, go knight f4, go g5 after, try to break with g6. I think white still gets very interesting attacking plans. But of course, when you have move like queen b5, which is just exploiting this concrete issues, because queen d7 allows bishop d6, and black can no longer recapture because of the pin, I think you should definitely go for it. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Alright everybody, getting the white pieces, gonna open up with a queen's pawn, and pawn starts with e6. We see that this sort of French defense type of move is very common for this rating range, and well, do not get scared, because it is most likely just gonna be transposing to the normal Jobava London stuff. So yeah, just going knight c3 and then bishop to f4. Of course, no need to play the move e4 and transpose back into a French defense. That will not really make a whole lot of sense for us specifically, and typically through this move order, expecting a lot of bishop to d6, maybe some bishop b4 as well, and also knight f6, which is just leading to one of the most standard starting positions for the Jobava London, where I recommend the move knight b5. Now on a6 though, which is very logical, stopping knight b5, you already want to be precise the way you play this. In this specific case where the bishop is already locked, I would say it's not that big of a difference. Typically, if this pawn was on e7, it's important to start with a move such as e3, because you want to keep ideas to meet stuff like bishop f5 with pawn to f3, and then we start yeah, launching the pawns. But yeah, on e6, still I'm gonna start with e3 and then knight f3. Now, whenever he has the bad bishop, the only thing that should be in your mind is, okay, we need to checkmate this guy. Otherwise, there is no way to simply make use of your position and your setup at all, because at the end of the day, it's just sort of a symmetrical pawn structure where the only advantage that we have is the fact that our light squared bishop will be better. It's gonna go to like d3, and it will be keeping a knight towards the enemy king. So once you manage to develop all these 4 pieces, then what's next on the list? We want to improve the knight. So Whenever you have d4, d5 type of positions, the e5 square is pretty vulnerable, and our knight will be having a very nice time over there. So we're gonna start with knight e5. I have to say I'm not worried about bishop takes on c3, pawn takes. That is actually only gonna be improving our position, since his dark square bishop was his only active bishop. Keep in mind, this bishop is passive. This guy is the only decent bishop in black's camp, so giving it away for the knight, unforced, and maybe better said unprovoked, will not be the best strategy for black, clearly. Now, when c5 happens, this is quite interesting, because if you have been watching the channel for the normal London system type of videos, the situation is a little bit different here, because in the normal London, let's say, typically we would be having the pawn instead of c2, it would be placed on c3. So this basically allowed us to meet c4 with bishop back onto c2, keeping the bishop on this juicy diagonal, attacking the enemy king. But now we have a different situation with the knight there in the Jubava, and c4 is actually quite annoying. So I would recommend to, whenever you see a move like c5, try to take it, only if d4 is not a problem. So say you get on the first moves like d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4, c5. In that position, I recommend e3, because dc, d4 is annoying. So remember, you always take on c5 unless d4 is not a problem. Here we can just take. So takes back with the bishop, and once you manage to go for this knight e5 idea, the next step is to bring more fuel to the attack. Do not go for the premature attaculation with g4, g5. Bring the queen first. The idea is to swing it to h3, from where it's gonna be creating a really nice duo with the bishop on d3. And only then we wanna get rid of this knight so that we could potentially checkmate. That is pretty much all of our strategy in a nutshell whenever we face these positions with the restricted bishop. Now, opponent does something that is very instructive, because he plays the move d4, which is very appealing to a lot of people, because it's very natural to try and get some type of counterplay. However, I think we're gonna be getting one of the nicest traps. So I think it's very tempting for a lot of people to react to that, but I'm gonna be like, oh no, my knight. You can take my knight. Oh no. What is this? Now, obviously, I'm creating a little bit of tension with the enemy queen. So I'm not saying even castling is the best move. I think my initial reflex was perhaps go ed. But yeah, he does not fall for the trap. I was obviously intending to meet dc3 with bishop h7 and then winning his queen with probably good position. Now on queen a5, still there is this idea of going knight c6, ed4, bishop d4. I'm not super sure that is so much better. Like bishop h7, knight h7, rook d4, there's z5 move. Gotta be really careful with queen's placement. So I think because our strategy is to get rid of the knight, knight to g4 really fits the whole picture here. Because if knight g4, that just allows checkmate. And typically a very good defensive move for him would have been g6. But the problem now is that g6 leaves the knight unprotected. So I don't quite see an easy way for opponent to defend, because a move like this just allows us to take. I know I could have perhaps sacrificed in the first place as well. It would have been pretty interesting. But I decided to speed up a little bit with a move, because we don't have much time left on the clock. Only 28 seconds, but looks like the king is about to get checkmated, which, yeah, is definitely some good news. He takes on c3. Shouldn't really bother us. I think just bishop back looks to be a checkmate to me, because the king has no square. So if you didn't already know, checkmate ends the game. So, okay, we made one blunder. What is the so-called blunder? Usually, I think such information is pretty misleading. Okay, so apparently, computer considers castling a blunder. Okay, it's like -0.3. So that is the so-called blunder, which is clearly a little bit of a bug, I would say. It's true, I could have started with knight g4 with like similar idea, but notice this time g6 is kind of solid, not easy to break now. I would probably have to take on f6, go knight e4, bishop b4 looks a bit annoying. It's hard to see the c3 move in advance, and now black is in trouble. So my point with castling was that dc3, bishop h7, winning the queen is usually pretty big. However, the computer feels pretty good even against a move like knight takes on f7, which just looks very scary to me if I had the black pieces. Computer evaluates this as being close to equal because black has one rook and two minor pieces. Now, my human assessment was the fact that the enemy king is so vulnerable. This should definitely give us a practical edge. However, you see that computer is not really concerned. But I think this is definitely a key idea that you want to remember, and just make sure to keep in mind this setup of going knight f3, bishop d3, standard Jobava setup. In case you would have jumped on e4, typically you want to take and then go for a move like knight e2, attacking the e4 pawn. A common way to win a lot of games in lower rated games is to go knight e5, and they will play the move f6, allowing queen h5, and then you just get a winning position. g6, knight takes on g6 just leads to a disaster for black. So I've had that, I've seen that quite a lot in my students' games. And after castle, knight e5, continue with the standard plan. I mean, ignore what the chess.com coach is saying, okay? That's not very precise information. So typically just want to do this, go g4, get rid of the knight, and you should be getting a bit of a mating attack. So remember what I said in the beginning of the video. You see the bishop being restricted. On c8, this is a sign, okay, we need to go for checkmate on the king side. So we managed to do exactly that, and with that being said, I think we can move on to the Halloween game. All right, everybody, getting the white pieces. We're gonna be sticking with our guns here, going for the little surprise opening. Gonna be playing the Jobava London, and wow, we get to deal with c5 on the second move. How interesting, because this is one of the very few spots where we actually are unable to play like normal with bishop f4, because cd, queen d4, knight c6 is a very tricky move to deal with, developing with tempo. So e3 also won't do the job because it's just blocking the bishop, and we can no longer play the Jobava, and that pretty much just sucks. So against c5, the idea is to be playing a reversed Albin gambit and go for the move e4, preparing to meet de with d5, and on cd4 we take back with the queen, and white is already much better there. So they are supposed to take on e4, and we're gonna be playing the move d5, and that could potentially lead to a very nasty trap. It would actually be pretty sickening if we manage to get that for the video, not gonna lie. The trap will take place in case of e6, but they can also play the move knight f6, which is, yeah, knight f6 is a little bit better, but white still gets nice position. So he actually plays e6. We might actually get this on the board. Point is to start with check, expecting bishop d7. You want to go d takes on e6. He's going to go bishop b5. No way he goes bishop b5. There's absolutely no way. Like, he should take this way. There's no way he takes the bishop. I refuse to believe it. Okay, so he takes this way. Now, point was, if he takes the bishop, we had pawn takes on f7. He cannot recapture because the queen hangs. Has to play king e7 there. And then we take, promoting to a knight because it's check. And then we win his queen. That's like one of the most hilarious traps that you could get in the Jobava. And now after fe, it's just, yeah, nothing really special. White is just better with a number of moves. I think check and then queen e5 is supposed to be quite precise there. I have a hard time recalling this, to be honest, but yeah, I'm gonna start with this. Seems pretty forced. Has to play knight f6, and then maybe, yeah, well, knight f6 could go probably bishop g5. Tempo move, developing, looks good to me. Okay, so queen f6, huh? That's interesting. Queen f6, we could definitely just play developing move, bishop f4, and inviting him to take, and he gets his own rook trapped in the process. But we can also play a move like queen c7 that's a little bit sneaky, creating a subtle threat of perhaps queen b7. Not only that, but even queen c8, because the bishop is pinned. So definitely many ways to continue already, which it's usually a good sign that our position is pretty promising. I think starting with the bishop is probably what the doctor ordered. I don't know, do you guys trust doctors? I want to go greedy. I want to go queen c7. I want to go risk it for the biscuit. I feel like the b7 spot is like really fragile in black's camp. How is he gonna even defend? I don't see a way for him to defend. Like bishop c6, that's not a move, and queen d8, that's not a move either. Queen b7, what is opponent doing? Queen takes b7 simply. Bishop b5 can pick up the rook, or could even wait a little bit and take with a knight. I think taking with a knight is better. Like take, he saves the bishop, you're still like winning, but have a little bit of patience, guys. You need to like really behave. You see something that is like so tasty on A8, like you just wanna eat that rook instantly. I get it. I have a thing for free rooks myself, but you need to be disciplined. That's what makes the difference from a random pleb that you are to a less random pleb. So knight e7 can go knight c7, take the rook, or can go for the fancy queen move. I think we just keep it simple at this point. And the guy just hanged his lady. We're gonna take it, I guess. What is this man doing? He needs help. Somebody help this. Somebody needs to help this person. I feel like he's a little bit upset. Okay, bishop to e7. Fine, exchanging pieces with such a massive lead in development is typically a good idea. Gonna get castled. He has to play knight d5 now. If he castles, then the knight remains undefended. And yeah, there is a thing with rook d5, but queen d6, hitting e6 should be good enough. Like king f7, at that point, rook d5 is even stronger. Plus, there's also an argument to be made for knight h3 with knight g5 ideas. So you could do both. Which one are we gonna play? I think knight h3. Threatening this in case of h6, knight f4 is very nice anyways. So yeah, h6, knight f4, get that on the board. Threatening on e6 and also on d5. Just simple chess at this point. No need to sacrifice or do any like fancy things. That would be like super unnecessary. So yeah, trying to go for fancy ideas while you have such an obviously winning position is just like basically having a third nipple. You cannot do anything with it. Plus, maybe pretty tricky to explain how you got it in the first place. So opponent just finds the resign button. And for those of you that are actually curious to see how that crazy knight promotion was going on, going back to this position after d takes on e6. If black would have gone for the somewhat tempting bishop takes on b5, there is pawn takes on f7. King cannot take because queen remains undefended. Notice that the rook is not protecting. And on king e7, point is you take, promote to a queen. He takes on d1, intermediate move with check, and then recapture. So that is iffy. But we take, oh, not queen. Oh, god damn it, I need to disable auto promotion to show this. How do I do this? Guys, I need to... Alright boys, we're back after a pretty tedious process of trying to find where the auto queen button was. Look at this beauty. Look at the sweet take. And then we get the horsey. Do you see that? I mean, how nice. He's gonna take, and then it looks like, you know, king and queen, they get along pretty well. They may perhaps even, yeah, keep up this relationship for a while. However, there is bishop to g5. The guy that she told you not to worry about. Completely ending black's career. And you just win the game. So, just a reminder for how this starts. You play knight c3, and in case they go for this weird c5 on the second move, you remember this is the only position where you are supposed to go for e4. Do e4, point is, they take, you go d5, making life uncomfortable for this knight so they cannot develop. And I should be doing pretty well. So with that being said, I think we should move on to the following game. I really appreciate you making it this far into the video, and in case you wanna take your knowledge of the Jobava London to the next level, please feel free to check out the rating climb that we did in the past using this opening. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you around on the channel. Take care.